Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today is another educational video where we're going to talk about a very important part of your application, recommendation letters. And the goal of this video is to help you get accepted to a dream university. So if you're interested, please take your notepad to write things down and listen carefully. We're gonna talk about recommendation letters, what to write in them, and we're gonna look at a recommendation letter that got a student into Harvard. So it's gonna be a very important and very informative video. Continue watching. I like to divide the application into 4 parts. Part number 1, your GPA and test scores, 30%. Part number 2, your results, your work experience, your volunteer experience, 30%. 30% your personal statements, motivation letters and stuff, and 10% are your recommendation letters. What does that mean for you? It means that 10% of your total preparation time should be dedicated to working with your recommendation letters. First thing to remember is that different programs require different recommendation letters, so always check the admissions section of your university's program. For bachelor's programs, you would normally take 2 recommendation letters from teachers at school, probably from subjects that are related to your field of study. For master's programs that are more scientific, you would probably have 2 academic recommendation letters from your professor or maybe a manager of your department, maybe some lecturers that you work closely with. And for your MBA, you would probably have 2 professional recommendations. Once you've looked at your university's page and realized that you need 1 academic, for example, and 1 professional recommendation letter, it's time to decide who's going to submit those recommendations. I've recently been to Stanford where we talked about the admissions to MBA programs, and what they told me is that they see so many recommendation letters from superstars. They see recommendation letters from kings and queens. They see recommendation letters from managers of top corporations, and they are no longer impressed by them. Because what they're looking for a recommender who really has worked with you, who knows you as a person, who can tell real life stories, anecdotes. Like when we think about personal statements and when we think about recommendation letters, these 2 parts of your application are the only way to show you as a person, to show you through stories and through your accomplishments. So it's very important to choose a person who you used to work with, who knows you from inside out. There's no point in reaching out to somebody who's super famous or who only knew you for like a week and ask them for a recommendation letter, because they wouldn't be able to tell any stories, and 90% chance they're going to tell you that they would not be able to submit that recommendation because they don't really know you, which makes total sense. Submitting your application. So basically, when you fill everything in on the university's website, you click this apply button, and there is a section called recommendation letters where you would insert your recommender's email. Very important thing to remember. I know some recommenders would have like @gmail or @hotmail.com. That would not work because this ruins your credibility. Because anyone could create @gmail email address and submit any recommendation. So please ask your professor or your teacher to find a corporate email or your boss, like it should be @yourcompany.com, @youruniversity.com, because this adds credibility to your application. And sometimes recommendation letters that are coming from @gmail would not be considered at all. So please pay attention to that. So in the recommendation letter section, you put in your recommender's email, and they get an email from a university that asks them to submit a recommendation letter. Now, what should be in that recommendation letter? Now let's talk about the content itself. If you are coming from an international university and English is not a native language at that country where you're coming from, you might have the same problem as I used to have. When I talked to my professors and asked them to submit a recommendation letter, they told me, unfortunately, Marina, we do not speak English, and please write recommendation letters yourself. We're gonna check the content, and if we're approved, we're just gonna submit it. That means double work for me, because it's gonna be me who's writing all the recommendation letters, and I would need to check them. And by the way, guys, always check your recommendation letters, always check your personal statements. Our team has created a service that's called Fluent.Express, where you can submit your text and a native speaker would instantly check it, because it's not just about grammar and spelling mistakes, it's also about the way you phrase your sentences, the way you use different words. Sometimes you would use words that do not make any sense. So please, very important, check everything on Fluent.Express, or if you're able to hire like a professional editor, do that. But Fluent.Express is a lot cheaper compared to other options. Now, when you think about the content of recommendation letter, it's always about anecdotes. So what I used to do, I used to sit down with my professors and would go through stories that I wanted them to mention. I wanted them to highlight that I'm one of the top performing students in class, and I wanted them to highlight how I did well at the exams. I wanted them to highlight that I have an active social life, and we sat down and we talked about things that I contributed to my department's social life, like I sang at the concerts and organized some events. And I also wanted them to highlight my volunteer experience, like the way I helped other professors, the way I organized different competitions for students. So it's really your job to sit down with a recommender and go through things that you want them to mention, because they have so many students, and sometimes they can just forget things. So that's really important. If you're writing a letter yourself, then it still makes sense to sit down with a professor and just discuss in your own language what you're going to write about, because sometimes they can add some valuable ideas. And after you have all of that, you put down a letter together. We're gonna look at the sample so you know how it looks. And your recommender just pastes it into the field that's provided by the university. So it's gonna be an automated link. People no longer send any hard copies, so it's all online. Really easy, but still it's possible to mess up, because sometimes people forget about deadlines, especially if you're applying in the second deadline, which is like beginning of January. A lot of professors would either go to vacation or have a lot of exams at work at a university, and they would just forget about your recommendation letter. And it's your job to make sure that the application is complete before you submit it. Because if they don't submit recommendations, the admissions committee is not going to consider your application. So please be careful about the deadlines, and please start this work as early as you can. Talk to your professors, talk to your teachers, talk to your colleagues. Another thing, sometimes you don't want to tell your manager that you're quitting. You might be quitting your job in a year or two if you get accepted to your master's or MBA. A lot of universities understand that, and sometimes they would allow you to ask for a recommendation letter from your colleague or maybe your client. Again, manager is always preferred, the CEO of the company is always preferred, but he cannot be your relative. So Dimitri was my recommender. He's now my husband, but he's also my CEO. And at the time when he recommended me, we were not married, so it was technically all correct, but please make sure that it's not your husband or your dad or your mom who's recommending you. They do not allow that. And yeah, then you submit recommendations and you just wait for the answer. And if you're applying to 6 universities, that means that your recommender would need to submit the recommendations 6 times. So you can apply to 20, you can apply to 30, but please make sure your recommender knows your plans, because that means like 30 times they're gonna click copy paste, and send. And all of the universities are different. For some universities, 1 letter should be okay. For other universities, like University of Florida, MBA program would ask you like 7 questions. They ask the recommender 7 questions. So it's not just copy pasting stuff. It's actually creating a recommendation letter for every single university. And it could be a lot of work. Okay, let's look at a recommendation letter that got a student into Harvard University. It's going to be for bachelor's programs. So as I mentioned, for bachelor's program, you normally ask your teachers like 2 different subjects to submit a recommendation. So here we have a guy who's asked his chemistry teacher to submit a recommendation. I'm going to give you a link below so you can check out the recommendation letter yourself. Basically, this one is super long. Normally, I would say it's 250 words. This one is a lot. Well, I would say it's like 500 words. Again, make sure you're within the word limit. It starts with "to whom it may concern," which is a very basic phrase for all formal letters when you don't know who you're talking to, and you probably don't know who you're talking to from the admissions committee. So "to whom it may concern," date, and then, okay, here we go. Very important. The first paragraph mentions that Alan, who's a student we're talking about, has taken part in the chemistry Olympiad taken by approximately 11,000 students nationwide, and he got a 2nd position. Super important. You start with things you want to highlight, because admissions committee has like maybe 5 minutes to look through your application, because they get thousands. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's even shorter, but they scan everything. So it's really important to put important things at first. And so the teacher, actually here's, it's a principal of his school, he starts with the Olympiad. And I think it's really, really smart. Then in the second paragraph, he talks about his academic performance. And he says that he was the top excelling student among the 2 sections of AP chemistry class. And he mastered laboratory techniques, earned top score. So he highlights that Alan is a top student. And then again, he goes back to anecdotes. He doesn't just mention that the student is good, the student is talented. He tells that Alan spent an extensive amount of time studying independently, like self-study, in order to ensure that he would cover all of the topics that our class did not yet study, and often thought additional instructions during lunch. Like, this is super important. He says, he tells real stories, how Alan invested his personal time into studying. And this is, again, a real anecdote that the admissions committee is looking for. It's not looking for adjectives. It's not looking for, compliments. It's looking for real stories. And here, what the principal does, he just talks about all of the stories. The next paragraph talks about Alan's social life. So it's always important to highlight yourself as a part of the community. It's always important to mention how you function within your class. So here he says that Alan often explained concepts to confused classmates, actively participated during discussion, asked questions to ensure he had firm understanding of concepts. So he's showing that Alan is an active student, not only focusing on himself, but also helping others. And he finishes with some compliments, but they're already proven by actions. He exhibits the qualities of a leader and promising science who truly loves science. I love this phrase. And then again, he goes back to his extracurricular activities, and he says that his free time is also connected to studying. And this is why I tell you guys it's really important to do some volunteer work. It's very important to do some extra academic stuff, travel to learn languages, travel to learn things, because this is something you can always mention in your recommendation letters and personal statements, so they look like you're doing a lot, and you probably are doing a lot. Alan was a participant at a research science institute at MIT, where he has conducted research. So he's mentioning like all of the different extracurricular scientific stuff that Alan has done. And he finishes his letter with just some personal traits, and it's really important to show your personal stuff as well. Like, Alan is a charismatic individual. He's respected and liked by faculty and peers. You can actually take some phrases to your recommendation letters. I really like that. He's an individual who's respected and liked by faculty and peers. And again, all of the compliments are followed by a real anecdote. Throughout his high school career, Alan often stopped by my room during lunch to take my AP chemistry tests to review his general chemistry. But he also often stopped by during lunch or after school to chat about his latest developments, events at school, and other various topics. So again, showing how Alan is actually interested in studying chemistry. He's a balanced individual with a sense of humor, so some compliments as well, and active participant in community activities and stuff. And he finishes the letter by formally recommending him. He says that Alan Chen would truly be a superior addition to the student body at Harvard. So basically he's kind of selling the student to Harvard. This is an ideal recommendation letter. This is something you can rely on when writing your own. Again, don't forget the main rule of recommendation letter. Any compliment should be followed by an anecdote, and the recommendation letter should be provided by a person who knows you well and who used to work with you a lot. That was it for me, guys. I really hope that this video was useful, and I really hope that you're now one step closer to getting into university of your dreams. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to use fluent.express, and don't forget that there's the whole comment section below this video where you can ask people about their admissions process, where you can communicate with people who are in the same situation as you, because I know it can be really lonely going through this process. If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, hit the red subscribe button, and like this video if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you soon. Don't forget to recommend this video to other applicants.